The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the community center, soft and golden, casting long rectangles of warmth across the worn wooden floors. Dust motes drifted lazily through the beams, dancing their own slow ballet in the quiet air. The building was old, but loved. Its walls held decades of music, movement, and memory, all of it soaking into the scuffed floorboards and the gentle creaking of the rafters above. Maya stood in the empty dance studio, her feet bare against the smooth wood, feeling the cool surface beneath her toes. She was early, as she always was, arriving before anyone else so she could feel the room breathe around her. The studio was peaceful in these morning hours before the rush of classes and the flutter of other dancers. Just her, the light, and the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. She was 23, slight and graceful, with dark hair pulled back into a simple bun and eyes that held a particular kind of attentiveness, the deep, quiet focus of someone who experiences the world differently. Maya had been deaf since birth, growing up in a house filled with signing hands and expressive faces, where communication flowed through gesture and expression rather than sound. Her parents had always encouraged her to pursue whatever brought her joy, and from the time she was small, what brought her joy was movement. Dance, for Maya, was not about music in the traditional sense. It was about vibration, about the pulse of energy through the floor, about the way light changed as bodies moved through space. It was about breath and rhythm and the feeling of air shifting around her. She had trained for years, learning to sense the beat through the floorboards, to follow the visual cues of other dancers, to feel the tremor of bass notes through her bones. This morning, she stretched slowly by the window, her body unfolding like something gentle and organic, a flower opening toward the sun. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the soft pull of muscle and tendon, breathing deeply through her nose. The air smelled faintly of wood polish and the lavender sachets the studio owner, Mrs. Chen, tucked into corners to keep everything fresh. Mrs. Chen had been kind to Maya, always kind. The elderly woman who ran the community center had known Maya since she was a child, taking her first tentative ballet classes, and she had never once questioned whether Maya belonged in a dance studio. She simply made space for her, adjusted when needed, and believed without hesitation that Maya had something beautiful to offer. Outside the window, the small town was waking slowly. Riverside was the kind of place where people knew their neighbors, where the local diners served the same warm breakfast every morning, where the streets were lined with old maples that turned brilliant gold in autumn. It was late October now, and the trees were at their peak, their leaves glowing like embers in the morning light. Maya could see them through the studio. Windows could see the way they swayed in the breeze, moving in their own kind of dance. She closed her eyes and felt the sun on her face, warm and steady. In these quiet moments before the day truly began, Maya felt most at peace. There was no pressure here, no expectations, just the simple joy of being in her body, in this room, in this light. But today was different from other days. Today there was a flutter of nervousness in her chest, a gentle anxiety that she couldn't quite smooth away. Because today was the day of auditions. The community center was putting on a winter production, a contemporary dance piece called Silent Night, Sacred Light, and they were looking for a lead dancer. It was a significant production, the biggest the center had attempted in years, with a small budget from a local arts grant and the promise of performances at the community theater downtown. Mrs. Chen had encouraged Maya to audition, her weathered hands gentle on Maya's shoulders, her eyes warm with belief. "You should try," Mrs. Chen had signed to her last week, her movements fluid and certain. "You have something special. Let them see it." Maya had nodded, had agreed, but now, standing in the morning light, she felt the weight of uncertainty settling over her like a heavy shawl. She had auditioned for things before, small roles, ensemble pieces, and she had always been met with a particular kind of hesitation, not cruelty exactly, but doubt. A gentle uncertainty from directors and choreographers who weren't sure how to work with a deaf dancer, who worried about timing, about cues, about whether it could really work. She understood their concerns. She did. Dance was so often built around music, around counting beats, around hearing the swell and fall of a score. But Maya had learned to translate all of that into something she could access. Visual cues, the vibration of sound through the floor, the movement of other dancers around her. She had learned to make it work, to make it beautiful. Still, the doubt of others had a way of seeping in, of making her question herself even when she knew, deep in her bones, that she belonged here. The door to the studio opened quietly, and Maya turned to see her best friend Elise entering with 2 steaming cups of tea. Elise was bundled in a soft cream cardigan, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, and she smiled when she saw Maya, lifting one of the cups in greeting. Maya smiled back, feeling some of the tension ease from her shoulders. Elise had been her friend since childhood, one of the first people outside her family to learn sign language just to talk to her. They had grown up together, shared secrets and dreams and countless hours in this very studio. Elise wasn't a dancer. She was a painter, with hands perpetually stained with charcoal and oil, but she understood Maya's passion the way only true friends can. "Thought you might need this," Elise signed with one hand, carefully balancing both cups. Chamomile. Calming. Maya accepted the tea gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic and breathing in the gentle floral scent. They sat together on the floor by the window, cross-legged and comfortable, sipping their tea in companionable silence. "Nervous?" Elise signed after a moment, her expression soft with concern. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to elaborate. The nervousness was more than just pre-audition jitters. It was the accumulated weight of all those gentle doubts, all those kind but uncertain faces, all those times she had been told, never harshly but always firmly, that perhaps she should consider other paths, other dreams. "You're going to be wonderful," Elise signed, her movements emphatic. "I know it. Mrs. Chen knows it. You know it too, even if you're scared." Maya managed a small smile, appreciating the faith even if she couldn't quite feel it herself. The tea was warm and soothing, spreading gentle heat through her chest and belly. She focused on that warmth, on the steadiness of Elise beside her, on the golden light spilling across the studio floor. The morning unfolded slowly. Other dancers began to arrive, young women and men from the community. Some Maya knew, some she didn't. They stretched, chatted quietly, prepared themselves. Maya watched them, noting their easy confidence, the way they moved through the space without second-guessing their right to be there. By 10 o'clock, the studio was filled with perhaps 20 dancers, all gathered for the audition. Mrs. Chen stood at the front of the room, her small frame radiating a quiet authority, and beside her stood a man Maya didn't recognize. He was perhaps in his 40s, with graying hair and a serious expression, dressed in all black with the expensive-looking watch catching the light. Mrs. Chen began to sign as she spoke, translating for Maya as she always did. "This is Mr. Harrison. He's a choreographer from the city, and he'll be directing our winter production. He's generously agreed to work with us on this project." Mr. Harrison nodded to the group, his expression neutral, professional. Maya couldn't read anything in his face, not kindness, but not unkindness either. Just a careful blankness, the look of someone assessing, evaluating. "We'll be auditioning in small groups," Mrs. Chen continued, her signs fluid. "Mr. Harrison will teach you a short combination, and then you'll perform it for him. Please remember to bring your full presence and artistry to the movement." The audition began. Dancers were divided into groups of 4, and Maya found herself in the second group, alongside 3 other women she knew vaguely from other classes. They were kind enough, offering small smiles, moving to give her a good position where she could see the choreographer clearly. Mr. Harrison demonstrated the combination. It was contemporary, fluid, with rolling movements and reaching gestures that reminded Maya of water, of wind through grass. She watched, intently, memorizing not just the steps, but the quality of the movement, the intention behind each gesture. This was how she learned, through observation, through feeling the logic of the choreography in her body. When it was their turn to perform, Maya felt her heartbeat quicken. She took her place, found her center, and waited for the cue. Mrs. Chen stood near the old stereo system, one hand raised. When she dropped it, Maya began to move. She let her body speak the language it knew best. The combination flowed through her, the reaching, the spiraling, the moments of suspension and release. She felt the vibration of the music through the floor, sensed the movement of the other dancers in her peripheral vision, used them as anchors to keep her timing aligned. Her body remembered what her mind had absorbed, and she danced with a quality that came from somewhere deeper than technique, a place of genuine feeling, of connection to the movement itself. When the combination ended, Maya was breathing hard but exhilarated. She had felt it, that moment of transcendence when dance became more than steps, when it became pure expression. But when she looked up, she saw Mr. Harrison's expression, and her exhilaration faltered. He was frowning slightly, his brow furrowed in thought. Not anger, exactly, but something like concern. He turned to Mrs. Chen, speaking in low tones, and though Maya couldn't hear the words, she could read the body language, the slight shake of his head, the uncertain gesture of his hands. Mrs. Chen's expression growing troubled. The rest of the auditions continued, but Maya felt a heaviness settling over her, soft and suffocating like snow. She had seen that expression before, that gentle doubt, that kind but firm uncertainty. When the auditions concluded, Mr. Harrison thanked everyone for coming and promised to post the cast list by the end of the week. Dancers gathered their things, chattering with nervous excitement about callbacks and casting. Maya moved slowly, packing her dance bag, her movements mechanical. Elise found her afterward, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Hey, you were beautiful. You know that, right?" Maya nodded, but she couldn't quite meet her friend's eyes. She had been beautiful. She knew that, but she also knew what that expression meant, what those quiet conversations between the choreographer and Mrs. Chen likely signified. They walked out together into the autumn afternoon. The air was crisp and cool, scented with wood smoke from distant chimneys and the earthy sweetness of fallen leaves. The maples along the street blazed gold and orange, and the light was beginning to slant toward evening, turning everything warm and hazy. "Ice cream?" Elise suggested, her signing cheerful. "The good place on Main Street?" Maya nodded, managing a smile. Ice cream sounded nice, sweet and cold and comforting in the way simple pleasures always were. They walked slowly through the quiet streets of Riverside, past the bookshop with its window display of autumn reads, past the hardware store where Mr. Peterson always waved from behind the counter, past the small park where children played on swings that creaked softly in the breeze. It was a gentle town, a kind town, and Maya loved it. But sometimes its very gentleness felt like a cage, a soft, comfortable place that nonetheless held her back from bigger dreams. At the ice cream parlor, Maya ordered her usual, lavender honey, and they sat by the window, watching people pass on the sidewalk outside. The ice cream was sweet and floral on her tongue, cool and soothing. "What are you thinking?" Elise signed, licking chocolate chip from her spoon. Maya considered the question. What was she thinking? That she was tired of being doubted. That she was tired of having to prove herself over and over. That she wanted, just once, to be seen without question, to be valued without hesitation. But she didn't sign any of that. Instead, she signed simply, "I hope it works out." Elise reached across the table and squeezed her hand, her grip warm and steady. "It will. Trust." Maya wanted to trust. She wanted to believe that her dancing spoke for itself, that her difference was not a deficit, but simply a different way of moving through the world. But trust was hard when the world kept offering her gentle doubt in return. The afternoon faded into evening, and Maya walked home alone through the dusky streets. Her small apartment was above the town's used bookstore, a cozy space that smelled perpetually of old paper and vanilla candles. She climbed the narrow stairs, her legs pleasantly tired from dancing, and let herself into the quiet of her rooms. Inside, she made herself dinner, simple pasta with olive oil and garlic, and ate by the window, watching the last light fade from the sky. The town settled into its evening rhythms, lights blinking on in windows, cars pulling into driveways, families gathering for dinner. From her window, Maya could see it all, this gentle choreography of ordinary life. Later, as she prepared for bed, she stood for a moment in front of her small mirror. She looked at herself, this young woman with dance-strong legs and uncertain eyes, with capable hands and a heart full of dreams that felt, sometimes, too big for the gentle confines of her life. "You are enough," she signed to her reflection, her movements small and private. "You are enough." She wasn't sure if she believed it, but she said it anyway, like a prayer, like a promise. And then she slept, while outside the autumn wind moved through the maple trees, and the moon rose slow and silver over Riverside, and the world turned gently on toward tomorrow. Act 2. The slow unfolding of difficulty. The days that followed the audition moved with a strange, suspended quality, like honey dripping from a spoon. Maya returned to her routines, teaching children's ballet classes at the community center, working her afternoon shifts at the bookstore below her apartment, taking her own classes in contemporary and modern technique, but underneath it all ran a current of waiting, of wondering, of trying not to hope too much. The bookstore where she worked was owned by an elderly couple, the Hoffmans, who had taken Maya on part-time years ago when she was still in high school. They were gentle souls, both of them, with matching silver hair and a shared passion for literature that had sustained their business for nearly 4 decades. They had learned basic sign language to communicate with Maya, their movements slow and careful, and they never seemed to mind when she needed to take breaks to respond to texts or when customers had to wait a moment for her to finish a conversation. It was Thursday afternoon, 3 days after the audition, and Maya was restocking the poetry section when Mrs. Hoffman approached her. The older woman's face was soft with concern, and she touched Maya's shoulder gently to get her attention. "Are you all right, dear?" Mrs. Hoffman signed slowly, her movements uncertain but well-intentioned. "You seem far away." Maya smiled and nodded, not wanting to burden this kind woman with her worries. "Just thinking about a dance audition," she signed back, simplifying her movements so Mrs. Hoffman could follow. "Ah!" Mrs. Hoffman's expression cleared with understanding. "Waiting is the hardest part, isn't it? Not knowing." Maya nodded again, appreciating the simple acknowledgement. Mrs. Hoffman patted her shoulder once more and returned to the front desk, leaving Maya with the poetry books and her thoughts. The poetry section had always been Maya's favorite part of the store. She loved the compact weight of the volumes, the way meaning could be distilled into just a few lines, the white space around the words that felt like silence made visible. She ran her fingers along the spines, Rumi, Oliver, Neruda, Rilke, and pulled out a slim volume of Mary Oliver's work, letting it fall open in her hands. "You do not have to be good," the poem began. "You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting." Maya read slowly, letting the words settle into her. Poetry was another form of dance, she had always thought, a choreography of language, rhythm made visible on the page. She read about wild geese flying home, about the world offering itself to imagination, about being loved simply for existing. She wanted to believe it, that she didn't have to prove herself into exhaustion, that she could be enough, exactly as she was. The shop bell chimed, a light Maya couldn't hear but could see as the door opened and a customer entered. Maya carefully reshelled the Oliver and returned to her work, letting the rhythm of her tasks soothe her. Books aligned, spines out, alphabetical order restoring a sense of control to a world that often felt chaotic. That evening, Maya had dinner with her parents at their house on the edge of town. Her childhood home was warm and familiar, filled with the scent of her mother's cooking and the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. Family photos lined the walls. Maya as a toddler, her parents on their wedding day, Maya's younger brother at his college graduation. Her mother, Sarah, had prepared Maya's favorite, vegetarian lasagna with layers of roasted vegetables and creamy ricotta, the top golden and bubbling. They ate at the kitchen table, conversation flowing in sign language, hands moving in the lamplight. "How was the audition?" her father, David, asked. He was a carpenter with strong, weathered hands that moved with surprising grace when he signed. Maya shrugged, trying for nonchalance. "Fine. I won't know for a few more days." Her mother reached across the table and covered Maya's hand with her own. "You were wonderful, I'm sure. You always are." "You don't know that," Maya signed, more sharply than she intended. "You weren't there." A hurt look flickered across her mother's face, and Maya immediately felt guilty. Her parents had been nothing but supportive, learning to sign before she could even walk, advocating for her in schools, never once suggesting that her deafness was a limitation rather than simply a difference. They didn't deserve her frustration. "I'm sorry," Maya signed quickly. "I'm just nervous." The choreographer seemed uncertain about me. "Uncertain how?" her father asked, his brow furrowing. Maya struggled to explain. "How did you describe that particular quality of doubt? Not hostile, not dismissive, just hesitant. Like watching someone eye a beautiful piece of furniture and wondering if it would fit through their door. Appreciative, but practical concerns overshadowing appreciation." "He just seemed worried," she finally signed, "about whether a deaf dancer could handle the lead role." Her parents exchanged a look, one of those silent married couple communications that needed no translation. Her mother squeezed her hand again. "If they don't see how talented you are, That's their loss, Sarah signed firmly. Any company would be lucky to have you. Maya nodded, appreciating the support even if it didn't quite reach the hollow place in her chest. Parental faith was different from professional validation. One was unconditional. The other had to be earned, proven, demonstrated again and again. They finished dinner with lighter conversation, her brother's new job in the city, her father's current woodworking project, her mother's book club drama. The normalcy of it was soothing, grounding. Whatever happened with the audition, she still had this: family, warmth, love. Walking home that night, Maya took the long route through the park. The evening was cool and still, the last leaves clinging to branches overhead. The street lamps cast pools of golden light along the path, and somewhere in the darkness, she could sense the movement of small creatures. Rabbits, perhaps, or possums going about their nighttime business. She sat on a bench by the pond, watching the moonlight shimmer on the dark water. The world was so quiet here, in a way that most people probably couldn't fully appreciate. No cars rumbling, no distant voices, no ambient hum of civilization. Just pure, deep silence, the kind you could sink into like a warm bath. In the silence, Maya's mind wandered to the audition, replaying it again and again. Had she been off on her timing? Had the other dancers been stronger? Was there something she could have done differently, better? But no, she pushed those thoughts away. She had danced beautifully. She knew she had. The question wasn't whether she was good enough. The question was whether they could see past their own assumptions long enough to recognize it. Friday arrived with a gentle rain, the kind that misted rather than poured, turning the world soft and gray. Maya spent the morning at the community center, teaching a ballet class for 6-year-olds who were more interested in spinning than proper technique. She loved teaching the little ones. They had no self-consciousness, yet no doubt, just pure joy in movement. One of her students, a tiny girl named Emma with dark curls and serious eyes, lingered after class while her mother chatted with another parent in the hallway. "Miss Maya?" Emma tugged on her sleeve to get her attention. Maya knelt down to the child's level, smiling. "Yes, sweetie?" Emma's hands moved in choppy, uncertain signs. She was still learning, but her family was making an effort. "Will you dance in the big show?" Maya's heart squeezed. "I don't know yet." She signed back slowly, letting Emma follow. "We'll see." "I hope so," Emma signed, then threw her small arms around Maya's neck in an impulsive hug. "You're the best dancer." Maya held the little girl close, feeling tears prick unexpectedly at her eyes. Children had a way of seeing truth that adults sometimes lost. To Emma, it was simple. Maya was a good dancer, therefore Maya should dance in the show. No complications, no doubts, just straightforward logic. If only the adult world worked that way. That afternoon, Maya was shelving books in the store when she felt a vibration through the floor, someone approaching from behind. She turned to find Mrs. Chen standing there, her expression troubled but kind. "Maya, dear," the older woman signed, her movements carrying an apologetic gentleness. "Do you have a moment?" Maya's stomach dropped. She knew suddenly what this conversation would be. She could read it in Mrs. Chen's body language, in the way she held herself with careful compassion. They moved to the back of the store, to a small reading nook with worn armchairs and soft lamps. Mrs. Chen settled into one chair with a slight sigh, and Maya took the other, her hands folded in her lap. "The casting is being finalized today," Mrs. Chen began, her signs slow and deliberate. "Mr. Harrison has made his decisions." Maya waited, her heart beating too fast. "He was very impressed with your dancing," Mrs. Chen continued. "He said you have beautiful quality of movement, genuine artistry." There was going to be a but. Maya could feel it coming like storm clouds on the horizon. "But," Mrs. Chen signed, and there it was. "He has concerns about the timing coordination. The lead role requires very precise synchronization with the other dancers and with the music. He's worried that without being able to hear the score, you might struggle with the exact timing needed." Maya's hands tightened in her lap. "I've never had timing problems before," she signed, trying to keep her movements calm, neutral. "I use the floor vibrations, visual cues from other dancers." "I know," Mrs. Chen interrupted gently. "I know you do. I told him about all the successful performances you've had here. But this is a more complex piece than anything we've done before, and he's worried about taking the risk. Risk. The word sat heavy in the space between them. Maya was a risk. Her difference made her a gamble, a potential liability. "So I didn't get it," Maya signed. Not a question, a statement. Mrs. Chen's face crumpled with sympathy. "He's offered you a place in the ensemble. A featured position, actually, with a small solo section. It's not the lead, but it's significant, and—" "It's fine," Maya signed, cutting her off. She couldn't bear to hear more justifications, more kind explanations of why she wasn't quite enough. "Thank you for telling me." She stood, needing to move, needing to be anywhere but in this chair receiving this news. Mrs. Chen stood too, reaching out to touch Maya's arm. "I'm sorry," the older woman signed. "I fought for you. I really did." Maya nodded, managing a tight smile. "I know. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay at all. She made it through the rest of her shift through sheer force of will, her hands working automatically to organize books, to help customers, to maintain the pleasant professional demeanor the job required. But inside, she felt like something was cracking, a fault line running through her center. When her shift finally ended, Maya didn't go home. Instead, she walked to the community center, let herself into the empty studio, and stood in the middle of the floor. The late afternoon light was fading, turning the room golden and dim. Dust motes drifted through the air. The mirrors reflected her back to herself. A young woman standing alone in an empty room, looking lost. And then, without music, without audience, without anything but her own need to move, Maya began to dance. She danced all the frustration, all the disappointment, all the accumulated weight of a lifetime of gentle doubts. Her body spoke what her hands couldn't sign. The anger, yes, but also the grief. The grief of always being almost enough, but not quite, of having to work twice as hard for half the recognition, of being seen first as disabled rather than as artist. She spun and reached and fell and rose again, her movements fierce in a way they rarely were. This wasn't the soft, controlled technique of her training. This was something rawer, more honest. This was her heart breaking in movement. When she finally stopped, she was breathing hard. Her cheeks wet with tears, she hadn't realized she'd been crying. She sank to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, and let herself feel it all, the disappointment, the injustice, the weariness. The door opened quietly, and Elise entered, as if summoned by Maya's distress. She must have heard from someone that the casting was being announced. She crossed the studio and sat beside Maya on the floor, not signing, not trying to fix anything, just present. Hey, they sat together as the light faded from the windows, as the room grew dim and cool around them. Finally, Elise signed, "I'm sorry." Maya nodded, leaning her head on her friend's shoulder. The weight of Elise's presence was comforting, solid and warm beside her. "I keep thinking I should be used to it by now," Maya signed after a long while, "but it still hurts every time." "Of course it does," Elise signed back. "It's supposed to hurt, because it's not fair." No, Maya thought. It wasn't fair. But fair and reality were often two very different things. That night, alone in her apartment, Maya made herself chamomile tea and stood by the window, watching the town settle into darkness. Lights glowed in windows across the street. Lives being lived, dreams being chased or abandoned, small victories and quiet defeats playing out in every household. She thought about the ensemble position Mr. Harrison had offered. It was something. It was more than nothing. She should probably be grateful. But gratitude felt impossible right now. Right now, all she felt was tired. Maya took her tea to bed, propping herself up against pillows with a book she wasn't really reading. The familiar ritual was soothing. The weight of the book, the smell of the pages, the soft glow of her bedside lamp. Tomorrow she would accept the ensemble position. She would dance in the production, would do her small featured part beautifully, would continue proving herself inch by painful inch. But tonight she let herself grieve. For the role she didn't get, for the doubt that seemed to follow her everywhere, for the exhaustion of always, always having to be exceptional just to be considered acceptable. Outside, the rain that had been threatening all day finally began to fall in earnest, a gentle percussion against the windows. Maya closed her eyes and felt the vibration of it through the building's old bones, a rhythm she could sense even if she couldn't hear. The rain continued through the night, washing the streets clean, soaking into the earth, nurturing the roots of those golden maples. And Maya slept finally, her dreams full of dancing. Not triumphant, not perfect, just movement for its own sake, free and unburdened in the generous space of sleep. Act 3. The Quiet Discovery. The autumn rain gave way to crisp, clear October mornings. The trees reached their peak brilliance and began gradually to let go of their leaves. They fell like slow golden snow, carpeting the sidewalks and lawns of Riverside, crunching softly underfoot. The air turned sharper, carrying the scent of wood smoke and approaching winter. Maya threw herself into preparation for the production. She attended the first rehearsals with a practiced smile, took her place in the ensemble with grace, learned the choreography that Mr. Harrison taught with careful attention to detail. The other dancers were kind to her, not pitying, but friendly, making sure she could see demonstrations clearly, checking in about timing cues. The lead role had gone to a dancer named Vanessa, a willowy blonde from the next town over who moved with liquid ease. Vanessa was talented, genuinely talented, and Maya tried hard not to resent her. It wasn't Vanessa's fault that she could hear, that she fit more easily into the choreographer's vision, that she didn't represent a risk. During a break in the third rehearsal, Vanessa approached Maya with a water bottle in hand. She spoke while signing, not fluently, but with earnest effort. "You're really good. Your solo section is beautiful." Maya appreciated the kindness, even if it stung a little. "Thank you," she signed back. "You're doing great with the lead." And Vanessa was. But Maya couldn't help imagining herself in that role, couldn't help feeling the phantom weight of what might have been. The rehearsal space was an old church hall the community center had borrowed. High ceilings with exposed beams, tall arched windows that let in floods of afternoon light. It smelled of old wood and candle wax, and the acoustic panels someone had installed years ago gave the room a hushed, contemplative quality that Maya found soothing. One afternoon after rehearsal, as Maya was gathering her things, Mrs. Chen approached her with an unfamiliar older woman in tow. The stranger was perhaps in her 70s, elegantly dressed in a camel-colored coat and silk scarf, with silver hair swept up in a graceful twist. Her face held the kind of beauty that comes with age, bones that had grown more distinguished, eyes that had witnessed decades, smile lines that spoke of a life well lived. "Maya," Mrs. Chen signed, her movements excited. "This is Dr. Helena Shaw. She's visiting from the city and heard about our production. She asked to meet you specifically." Maya shook Dr. Shaw's extended hand, confused but polite. The older woman's grip was firm and warm. "It's lovely to meet you," Dr. Shaw signed, fluidly, perfectly, with the grace of a native signer. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I was watching the rehearsal from the back, and your dancing caught my attention." "Thank you," Maya signed, still uncertain where this was going. Dr. Shaw's smile was gentle and knowing. "I'm a retired dance professor. I taught at the conservatory in the city for 35 years. I also happen to be deaf." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Surprise, recognition, a sudden sense of kinship. A deaf dance professor. Someone who had not just navigated but excelled in this world that so often felt closed to her. "I didn't know," Maya signed, then immediately felt foolish. Of course she didn't know. Why would she? "No reason you should," Dr. Shaw signed back, her movements warm with understanding. "I'm semi-retired now, living quietly, but I still keep connections in the dance world, and I still believe that dance is for everyone, including especially deaf dancers." Mrs. Chen excused herself quietly, leaving them to talk. Dr. Shaw gestured to a bench against the wall, and they sat together, the afternoon light slanting through the arched windows in golden beams. "May I ask you something?" Dr. Shaw signed. "Why are you in the ensemble and not dancing the lead?" Maya hesitated, not wanting to seem bitter or ungrateful. But there was something about this woman's direct gaze, her matter-of-fact question, that invited honesty. The choreographer had concerns about timing coordination, Maya signed carefully. He thought it would be too risky to cast a deaf dancer in the lead. Dr. Shaw's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or old frustration remembered. "Ah, the risk argument. I've heard that one before." "It's not entirely unfair," Maya signed, trying to be balanced. the lead role does require precise coordination, which you are entirely capable of, Dr. Shaw interrupted gently but firmly. Let me guess. You use floor vibrations, visual cues, peripheral awareness of other dancers' movement? Maya nodded. And you've performed successfully before? Yes, but never a lead role, never in something this complex. Because no one has given you the chance, Dr. Shaw signed, not because you lack the ability. The simple statement hit Maya with unexpected force. It was true. How could she prove she could handle a lead role if no one would cast her in one? It was a circular trap, a catch-22 that felt impossible to escape. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the tall windows, Maya could see leaves tumbling through the air, their descent lazy and unhurried. I'd like to tell you something, Dr. Shaw signed finally. A story, if you'll indulge an old woman. Maya nodded, settling in to watch. When I was your age, 23, 24, I was dancing with a small contemporary company in the city. I was in the core, happy enough, but dreaming of more. Then the artistic director decided to mount a production of a new work, something experimental, challenging, and she cast me as the lead. Dr. Shaw's hands moved with the rhythm of memory, painting the story in the air between them. The board of directors was horrified. How could a deaf dancer lead a company? What would the critics say? What if I ruined the company's reputation? They pressured the director to recast the role. Dr. Shaw's smile turned wry. She refused, told them that if they didn't trust her artistic judgment, they could find a new director. What happened? Maya signed, leaning forward. I danced the lead, and yes, there were challenges. We had to adjust some things, create new cueing systems, but we worked it out. The performance was successful, more than successful. It changed my career, it changed my life. Maya felt a spark of something in her chest. Hope, perhaps, or inspiration, or just the simple comfort of knowing she wasn't alone in this particular struggle. The point, Dr. Shaw continued, is not that it was easy or that everyone supported me. The point is that someone believed enough to take the chance, and that made all the difference. But Mr. Harrison doesn't believe, Maya signed quietly. Not in me, not in this. Perhaps not yet, Dr. Shaw agreed. But belief can be learned. Sometimes people need to see something before they can believe it's possible. They talked for another hour, Dr. Shaw sharing stories from her dancing career, offering advice, asking questions about Maya's training and aspirations. It felt like finding an oasis in a desert. This connection with someone who understood not just the technical challenges, but the emotional weight of constantly having to prove oneself worthy. When they finally parted, Dr. Shaw pressed a business card into Maya's hand. My email, she signed. Stay in touch. And Maya, don't let anyone else's limited imagination define your possible. Walking home that evening, Maya felt lighter than she had in weeks. The conversation with Dr. Shaw had reminded her that she wasn't alone, that others had walked this path before her and had not just survived, but thrived. It didn't change her current circumstances. She was still in the ensemble, still not dancing the lead, but it changed something in how she held herself, in how she thought about her future. At home, Maya made dinner, stir-fried vegetables with rice, simple and warming, and then pulled out her laptop. She found Dr. Shaw's website, discovered a treasure trove of articles and videos about deaf dancers, about adaptive choreography, about expanding definitions of what dance could be. One video in particular caught her attention. Footage of a performance Dr. Shaw had choreographed, where deaf and hearing dancers moved together, where American Sign Language became part of the choreography itself, where difference was not minimized but celebrated. The movements were beautiful, powerful, and deeply moving in ways Maya couldn't quite articulate. She watched the video 3 times, each viewing revealing new layers. This was possible. This kind of art, this kind of integration, it existed in the world. Maybe not in Riverside yet, maybe not in this production, but somewhere. And if Dr. Shaw had helped make it possible, maybe Maya could too, someday. The next morning, Maya woke with renewed energy. She went to the community, center early, before anyone else arrived, and spent an hour in the studio working on her featured solo. The choreography Mr. Harrison had created for her was lovely, a section where the ensemble faded back and she danced alone for 32 counts, 8 measures of gentle, flowing movement. But as she practiced, Maya found herself adding things, small flourishes, slight variations in the quality of the movement, making it more distinctly hers. Not changing the choreography exactly, just deepening it, bringing more of her own artistry to the surface. She was so absorbed in the work that she didn't notice someone entering the studio until a shadow fell across her practice space. She spun, startled, to find Mr. Harrison standing in the doorway. Her first instinct was embarrassment, caught modifying his choreography without permission. But Mr. Harrison's expression wasn't angry. It was thoughtful, assessing, with something that might have been surprise. He waited until she was looking at him, then spoke slowly so she could read his lips. "That was interesting. What you were doing just now." Maya swallowed nervously. "I was just exploring variations. I didn't mean to change." No, he interrupted, his hands moving in basic signs. Apparently he'd been learning. "It was good. Better than what I choreographed, actually. More personal." They looked at each other across the studio, the morning light streaming through the windows between them. Mr. Harrison seemed to be struggling with something, working through thoughts that showed on his face. "Can I ask you something?" he finally signed, his movement slow but sincere. "Why do you dance?" Maya blinked, caught off guard by the question. Why did she dance? It felt like asking why she breathed, why her heart beat. Dance was so fundamental to who she was that she'd never really articulated the why. But she tried. "Because it's the most honest way I know to express what I feel. Because my body can say things my hands can't sign. Because when I dance, I'm not deaf or hearing. I'm just alive." Something shifted in Mr. Harrison's expression. "That's what I saw just now. That aliveness. I haven't seen it in some of the other dancers, even though their technique is perfect." He moved further into the room, came to stand near her in the morning light. "I made a decision about casting based on practical concerns," he signed carefully. "Timing, coordination, risk mitigation, all reasonable things. But watching you just now, I'm wondering if I made the wrong decision for the wrong reasons." Maya's heart began to beat faster. She didn't want to let hope in, didn't want to set herself up for another disappointment. "The thing is," Mr. Harrison continued, "dance isn't just technique. It's not just hitting the right counts in the right way. It's communication. It's emotion. It's presence. And you have all of that, in abundance." He paused, seemed to come to some internal decision. "Would you be willing to learn the lead role?" he signed. "Not to replace Vanessa. We'll keep her as planned. But to be my understudy. To learn it, to show me what you can do with it. And then, we'll see." Maya felt dizzy, like the floor had suddenly tilted beneath her feet. "You want me to understudy the lead?" "I want to see what you can do," he confirmed. "No promises about performance. But I realize I judged your limitations without actually seeing you attempt the role. That was unfair of me." It wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't the lead, not outright. But it was a chance, an opening. A door that had been closed now cracking open to let in a sliver of light. "Yes," Maya signed, her movements emphatic. "Yes, I'd like that very much." Mr. Harrison nodded, offering a small smile. "Good. We'll start this week. Extra rehearsals, just you and me, working through the role." After he left, Maya stood alone in the studio, hand pressed to her chest, feeling her heart race with a mixture of excitement and terror. This was her chance, her opportunity to prove what she'd been trying to prove for so long. She couldn't mess it up. That evening, she met Elise at their favorite coffee shop, a cozy place called The Daily Grind with mismatched furniture and art from local painters on the walls. Elise arrived covered in paint stains, as usual, and immediately ordered them both hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. When Maya signed the news about understudying the lead, Elise literally squealed, a sound Maya couldn't hear but could feel in the vibration of her friend's excitement. "This is amazing," Elise signed wildly, nearly knocking over her hot chocolate. "This is your chance, your big break." "It's just understudying," Maya signed, trying to temper expectations even as her own hope threatened to overflow. "I might never even perform it." "Details," Elise dismissed with a wave. "The point is, he's giving you a shot. That's huge. They celebrated quietly, sipping their hot chocolate and planning out Maya's rehearsal strategy. Elise, ever the optimist, was already imagining opening night with Maya in the lead role. Maya tried not to let herself go there, tried to stay grounded, practical. But late that night, alone in her apartment, she allowed herself to imagine it. Standing center stage in the light, dancing not as ensemble or even featured soloist, but as the lead, being the center, the heart, the story, being seen fully for what she could do rather than limited by what people assumed she couldn't. It was a beautiful imagining, and for the first time in weeks, Maya let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, it could become real. The November wind moved through Riverside that night, carrying away the last of the autumn leaves and bringing the first hint of winter's approach. And in her small apartment above the bookstore, Maya slept with a smile on her face, her dreams full of dancing, of light, of possibility. Act 4. The tender rising action. The weeks that followed were a blur of rehearsal, work, teaching, and more rehearsal. Maya's days took on an intense but manageable rhythm. Mornings at the bookstore, afternoons teaching children's ballet, evenings at regular production rehearsals with the full cast, and then late nights working privately with Mr. Harrison on the lead role. Those late-night sessions became sacred time for Maya. The studio, dim except for a few work lights, felt like its own world, a space carved out of the ordinary where she could try and fail and try again without audience. Mr. Harrison proved to be a patient teacher, his initial uncertainty giving way to genuine engagement with the challenge of teaching a deaf dancer a complex lead role. Think of it this way, he signed one evening, his movements becoming more fluid as he practiced. Hearing dancers often depend too much on the music. They let it do the work of keeping time instead of developing their own internal sense of rhythm. You don't have that crutch. You have to build the rhythm from inside yourself. That's actually stronger. They developed systems, a lighting cue that would flash at the downbeat of certain measures, visual markers, other dancers' positions that Maya could use as timing anchors, and mostly they worked on helping Maya feel the rhythm so deeply in her body that it became second nature, something she could trust without external cues. The choreography itself was beautiful and challenging. The piece told a story about the cycle of seasons, about death and rebirth, about the journey from darkness into light. The lead role was a winter spirit, moving through loneliness into connection, isolation into community. Maya felt the resonance of that journey in her own bones. There was one sequence in particular that gave her trouble, a section where she had to move rapidly through a formation of other dancers, weaving between them with split-second timing. Miss the spacing by even a beat, and there would be collisions, chaos. They practiced it over and over. Maya memorized not just her own pathway, but the exact position of every other dancer, created a mental map she could reference. She learned to sense the nearness of bodies, to use her peripheral vision to track movement, to trust her spatial awareness. Again, Mr. Harrison would sign patiently after each attempt. And again Maya would try, adjusting, refining, calibrating her internal timing against the demands of the choreography. On the 15th attempt, something clicked. Maya moved through the formation like water flowing around stones, her timing perfect, her pathway clean. When she emerged on the other side and looked back at Mr. Harrison, his face was lit with genuine delight. That was it, he signed, his movements triumphant. That was exactly it. Maya felt a rush of exhilaration so intense it made her dizzy. She'd done it. She'd solved the puzzle, mastered the difficulty. If she could do this, she could do the entire role. During the regular ensemble rehearsals, Maya continued to dance her featured solo while secretly holding the full lead role in her mind. She watched Vanessa work, noting choices the other dancer made, comparing them with her own interpretations. Vanessa was good, smooth, technically proficient, pleasing to watch. But Maya thought she could bring something different to the role, something rawer, more emotionally transparent. Vanessa remained kind throughout, seemingly unaware that Maya was learning her choreography. The other dancers were supportive, celebrating when Maya nailed a difficult section of her solo, offering encouragement during breaks. One afternoon, during a water break, one of the ensemble dancers, a guy named Marcus with kind eyes and a ready smile, approached Maya. "Hey," he signed. Many of the dancers had picked up basic signs over the weeks. "I just wanted to say, watching you work has been really inspiring. You work harder than anyone here, and it shows." Maya felt warmth bloom in her chest. "Thank you," she signed back. "That means a lot." "I'm serious," Marcus continued. "You make all of us want to be better dancers." These small kindnesses sustained Maya through the grueling schedule. The support of the other dancers, Mrs. Chen's steady belief, Elise's enthusiastic championing, her parents' quiet pride. Even Mr. Hoffman at the bookstore got in on it, learning to sign "break a leg" so he could wish her well before rehearsals. 3 weeks before opening night, something shifted. Vanessa arrived at rehearsal moving stiffly, favoring her left leg. By the end of the warm-up, it was clear something was wrong. She tried to push through, but when she attempted a jump sequence, she came down wrong and crumpled to the floor with a cry of pain. Everyone rushed to her side. The company's volunteer physical therapist, a kind woman named Joan who donated her time to the community center, examined Vanessa's ankle carefully. The verdict, a moderately bad sprain, not catastrophic, but serious enough to require rest and rehabilitation. Vanessa would be out for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3. The rehearsal ground to a halt. Everyone stood around uncertainly. 3 weeks before opening night, and they'd just lost their lead dancer. Mr. Harrison called a 5-minute break, then gathered everyone together. His face was serious but calm. "All right," he signed to the group, speaking simultaneously so everyone could follow. "This is unfortunate, but it's also why we plan for contingencies. Maya has been learning the lead role as understudy. She'll step in while Vanessa recovers." Maya felt every eye in the room turn to her. Some faces showed surprise, others uncertainty. A few, Marcus among them, showed excitement and support. "We'll have a full run-through tomorrow," Mr. Harrison continued. "For tonight, Maya and I will work through the role one more time, and I want everyone else to review their choreography, particularly the sections that interface with the lead. Questions?" There were murmurs, a few hands raised with logistical questions, but the overall mood was one of determination. They were a company. They would make this work. After the others left, Maya and Mr. Harrison stayed late in the studio. They ran through the entire piece twice, once slowly, marking positions and timing, and once at full energy. By the end, Maya was exhausted, but exhilarated. "You're ready," Mr. Harrison signed, his expression serious but warm. "You're more than ready. Tomorrow we'll see how you work with the full cast, but I have confidence in you." Maya walked home through the November evening, the air crisp and cold, her breath forming clouds she could see but not feel. She felt like she was floating, disconnected from her body by the unreality of what was happening. After all the doubt, all the disappointment, all the proving herself again and again, she was getting her chance. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, a different feeling settled over her. Not exhilaration now, but something quieter, something that felt like responsibility. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every deaf dancer who'd been told they couldn't, about every person who'd been limited by someone else's assumptions. If she succeeded, maybe it would be easier for the next person. If she failed, she pushed that thought away. She wouldn't fail. She couldn't fail. That night she barely slept. She ran through the choreography in her mind, visualizing every step, every transition, every moment where timing was critical. She reviewed her systems, the lighting cues, the visual markers, the internal rhythm she'd developed. She was ready. She had to be ready. The next day's run-through was complicated. There were stumbles, missed cues, moments where Maya's timing was slightly off from the ensembles, creating small gaps in what should have been seamless flow. Nothing catastrophic, but enough rough edges to make everyone nervous. Mr. Harrison remained patient, working through trouble spots, adjusting where needed. Some adjustments were to Maya's choreography, others were to the ensemble's positioning to give Maya clearer visual cues. "This is normal," he signed during a break, sensing Maya's frustration. "First full run is always rough. We have time to smooth it out." But they didn't have much time. 2 weeks and a few days until opening night. And while everyone was being kind, Maya could sense the underlying tension. They were all wondering the same thing. Could this really work? By the end of that week, things were improving. The ensemble adapted to working with Maya as the lead, learning to be more conscious of their positioning, understanding that she needed certain visual markers. Maya, in turn, learned to trust them, to use their movement as anchors, to let the dance be collaborative rather than trying to control every variable herself. There were beautiful moments, sections where everything clicked into place and the dance flowed with organic beauty. The part where Maya, as winter spirit, moved through the darkness of early evening, reaching toward light she couldn't yet touch, but could sense approaching. The sequence where the ensemble gradually surrounded her, their presence transforming her isolation into belonging. One evening after rehearsal, Vanessa, on crutches but improving, came to watch. Afterward, she made her way over to where Maya was stretching. "That was beautiful," Vanessa signed, her movement slow but sincere. "You're making it your own. It's different from how I danced it, but really moving." Maya felt a rush of gratitude and relief. She'd been worried that Vanessa might feel resentful about being replaced, even temporarily. "I'm sorry you got hurt," Maya signed back. "I hope you heal quickly." "Me too," Vanessa agreed with a rueful smile. "But honestly, I think you might be better in this role than I was. You have something, I don't know how to describe it, a quality of longing, maybe, of really understanding what it means to be on the outside looking in." The observation was more perceptive than Maya had expected, and it touched something tender in her. Because yes, she did understand that. She'd lived that. The choreography's journey from isolation to belonging wasn't just abstract movement for her. It was deeply personal. As opening night drew closer, the production took on a life of its own. Set pieces were built, simple but elegant, with tall panels that could be rearranged to suggest different landscapes. Costume fittings happened. Maya's winter spirit costume was silvery blue with flowing fabric that caught the light beautifully. Technical rehearsals brought in lighting and sound, adding new layers to the performance. During one technical rehearsal, the lighting designer, a young woman named Tasha with purple hair and creative vision, approached Maya with an idea. "What if we made the lighting cues even more pronounced?" she signed enthusiastically. "Not just functional, but artistic. So when the downbeat hits, there's a visible shift in the light that both serves your timing needs and enhances the emotional tone of the scene." They experimented, and the results were stunning. The lighting became another layer of the storytelling. Pulses of warmth and cold, brightness and shadow that Maya could feel as well as see. It helped her timing while also making the visual experience richer for the audience. 1 week before opening night, Dr. Helena Shaw came to watch a full dress rehearsal. She sat in the back of the small theater, still and attentive, and afterward came backstage to find Maya. "That was extraordinary," she signed, her eyes bright with emotion. "You've done something really special here. Not just dancing the role, but transforming it into something uniquely yours." "There are still rough spots," Maya signed back, always her own harshest critic. "Of course there are," Dr. Shaw agreed. "There always are. But the heart is there. The truth is there, and that's what matters most." She pulled Maya into an unexpected hug, and Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. To have this woman, this dancer who'd walked this path before her, offer validation meant more than she could express. The days before opening night blurred together, final rehearsals, last-minute adjustments, growing excitement mixed with mounting anxiety. The local newspaper ran a feature about the production, including a photo of Maya mid-leap and a paragraph about the groundbreaking inclusion of a deaf lead dancer. Maya's parents bought tickets for opening night, along with what seemed like half the town. The bookstore's window displayed a poster for the show. Little Emma from Maya's ballet class drew a picture of Maya dancing and gave it to her before class, signed "Good luck," with her small, careful hands. The night before opening, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through the choreography in her mind. Tomorrow night, she would step into the light and dance the most important performance of her life. Tomorrow night, she would prove, to Mr. Harrison, to the audience, to herself, that deaf dancers could do anything hearing dancers could do. Tomorrow night, everything would change. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to creep into her bedroom, Maya got up. She made chamomile tea, wrapped herself in a soft blanket, and sat by the window watching the town wake up. The street lamps clicked off one by one. Lights began appearing in windows. The world stirred itself toward a new day. "You're ready?" Maya signed to herself, her reflection in the window ghostly in the early light. "You're ready." And this time, she almost believed it. Act of 5. the soft resolution and emotional healing. Opening night arrived with crystalline winter beauty. The November sky was impossibly blue, the air sharp and clean, carrying the promise of snow that hadn't yet fallen. Riverside transformed in the afternoon light, every building and tree outlined in gold, as if the universe itself was preparing for something significant. Maya spent the day in deliberate calm. She taught her morning children's ballet class, the familiar routine soothing her nerves, then had lunch with her parents at their house. Her mother made vegetable soup and fresh bread, comfort food that warmed her from the inside out. "How are you feeling?" Her father signed across the kitchen table, his weathered hands gentle. "Nervous," Maya admitted. "Excited, terrified, everything at once." Her mother reached across and squeezed her hand. "You're going to be magnificent. We're so proud of you, no matter what happens tonight." "No matter what," her father echoed, and Maya felt tears threaten. Her parents had been her anchor through everything, every disappointment, every doubt, every small victory. Having them in the audience tonight meant more than she could articulate. After lunch, Maya returned to her apartment to rest. She lay on her bed, practicing a relaxation technique Dr. Shaw had taught her, progressive muscle release, starting from her toes and moving up through her body, releasing tension inch by inch. She visualized the performance going perfectly, saw herself moving with confidence and grace, felt the satisfaction of each section executed beautifully. By 4 o'clock, it was time to head to the theater. The community theater was a small, historic building downtown, with velvet seats and Art Deco fixtures that had been lovingly maintained for nearly a century. Backstage, the energy was electric. Dancers stretching, costume pieces being adjusted, makeup being carefully applied, nervous chatter filling the air. Maya found her spot at the mirror in the dressing room and began her preparation ritual. Foundation, powder, dramatic eye makeup to make sure her face would read clearly from the audience. Her hands were steady, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought might falter. Elise appeared in the doorway, having talked her way backstage, carrying a small bouquet of white roses. "For afterward," she signed, setting them carefully on the counter. "But I wanted to see you before. How are you?" "I don't know," Maya signed honestly. "Ask me in 3 hours." Elise laughed and pulled her into a tight hug. "You're going to blow everyone away. I know it. Break a leg." Mrs. Chen came by to check on everyone, her presence calming and warm. Mr. Harrison gave notes, small reminders, words of encouragement. The ensemble gathered in a circle backstage, holding hands, breathing together, creating a shared sense of purpose and support. At 7:15, the house lights began to dim. The audience settled into their seats, Maya's parents in the third row, Elise beside them, Dr. Shaw somewhere in the middle, people from town, strangers from neighboring communities, all gathered in the intimate space to witness this performance. Maya stood in the wings, watching the stage lights come up, illuminating the simple but elegant set. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her rib cage. Her mouth was dry. Her hands trembled slightly. This was it. This was everything. The music began. Not that Maya could hear it, but she could see the lighting cue, feel the subtle vibration through the floor that meant the opening notes were sounding. The ensemble took their positions on stage, moving like shadows in the dim light. And then it was time. Maya stepped onto the stage. The lights enveloped her, warm and bright. She could see past them to the audience. Faces she knew, faces she didn't, all watching, waiting. For a moment, the enormity of it threatened to overwhelm her. Then she found her center, took a breath, and began to move. The opening sequence was slow, exploratory, the winter spirit alone in her cold landscape, testing the boundaries of her existence. Maya let her body speak. Loneliness let her arms reach into empty space, let her face show the ache of isolation. She forgot about technique, forgot about timing cues, forgot about everything except the story she was telling with her body. The ensemble began to join her, moving in patterns around her, their presence creating context. Maya wove between them, using their positions as her markers but also responding to them emotionally, letting the dance be conversation rather than just choreography. The difficult sequence, the one she'd practiced dozens of times, came and went smoothly. She threaded through the formation of dancers like she'd been doing it for years, her timing perfect, her pathway clean. As she emerged on the other side, she caught a glimpse of Mr. Harrison in the wings, his face lit with something that might have been pride. The performance unfolded like a dream. There were moments of transcendence, where Maya felt herself disappear into the movement, where dancer and dance became one thing. The part where she slowly rose from darkness, the ensemble lifting her, light beginning to break across the stage, she felt that light not just as external illumination, but as internal warmth, as hope, as healing. The second act brought the turn toward connection, the winter spirit beginning to understand she didn't have to be alone, that warmth was possible, that community was waiting to embrace her. Maya danced this transformation with her whole heart, let her face show vulnerability and longing and the tentative beginning of trust. There was a moment, about 2/3 through the performance, where everything clicked into perfect alignment. Maya was exactly where she needed to be, the ensemble was perfectly synchronized, the lighting was stunning, and the story was landing with emotional clarity. She felt it, that rare moment of artistic truth where everything comes together and something magical happens. She couldn't hear the audience, couldn't hear their breathing or their reactions, but she could feel their attention, their engagement. The air in the theater felt different, charged, focused, held in collective concentration. The final sequence approached, the resolution, where the winter spirit was fully embraced by community, where isolation transformed into belonging. The ensemble surrounded Maya in a slowly contracting circle, their movements protective and warm. Maya reached toward them, let them draw her in, let herself be held and supported. The last image, Maya in the center, the ensemble's hands gently touching her shoulders, her arms offering connection. The lights slowly fading, the music swelling, Maya felt its vibration through the floor like distant thunder. And then darkness. For a heartbeat, stillness. Then the theater exploded with applause. Maya couldn't hear it, but she could feel it. The vibration of hundreds of hands clapping, the movement of bodies rising to their feet, the wave of energy washing toward the stage. The lights came, back up for curtain call, and the ensemble was beaming, reaching for her hands, pulling her forward for bows. The audience was standing, all of them, her parents with tears on their faces. Elise jumping up and down, clapping frantically. Dr. Shaw with her hands raised high, pride radiating from her face. Strangers moved by something they'd just witnessed, offering their appreciation, their recognition, their respect. Mr. Harrison walked onto the stage from the wings, and the applause grew even louder. He gestured to the ensemble, then to the technical crew, giving credit where it was due. Then he turned to Maya, took her hand, and raised it high. The message was clear. She had done this. She had proven what was possible. Backstage afterward was chaos in the best way. Hugs, congratulations, excited conversations. Someone thrust Maya's bouquet of white roses into her arms. Vanessa, on crutches, pulled her into a tight embrace. Marcus lifted her off her feet in exuberance. Mrs. Chen was openly crying, her weathered face wet with happy tears. Maya's parents found their way backstage, her mother's hug lasting a long time, her father's eyes suspiciously bright. "You were perfect," her mother signed. "So beautiful, so powerful." "I'm so proud," her father added, his usually steady hands shaking with emotion. So proud. Dr. Shaw appeared, elegant as always, and simply nodded at Maya with deep understanding. No words were needed. They both knew what this meant, not just for Maya, but for every deaf dancer who would come after. Later, after most people had left, after the adrenaline had begun to fade and exhaustion was setting in, Maya found herself back on the empty stage. The work lights were on now, harsh and practical, stripping away the magic of performance. But standing there in the middle of the space, she could still feel the resonance of what had happened tonight. Mr. Harrison found her there. He walked out onto the stage, hands in his pockets, his expression thoughtful. "I owe you an apology," he signed slowly. "When I first saw you audition, I saw your deafness before I saw your artistry. I made assumptions about limitation instead of asking questions about possibility. You gave me a chance in the end," Maya signed back. "That's what matters." "Still," he persisted, "I almost didn't. I almost let my own limited imagination close a door that should have been open. That was wrong." They stood together in the empty theater, the silence between them comfortable, honest. "What you did tonight," Mr. Harrison continued, "wasn't just good dancing. It was transformative. You made all of us, see dance differently, see what it can be when we stop limiting it to narrow definitions. So, what happens now? Maya asked. When Vanessa's ankle heals? Mr. Harrison smiled. I've been thinking about that. What would you say to alternating performances? You and Vanessa trading off nights, each bringing your own interpretation to the role. Maya's breath caught. Not just tonight, not just filling in, but actually sharing the lead, being recognized as fully capable of the role. I'd say yes, she signed, her movements emphatic. Absolutely yes. They shook hands, a new understanding between them. Then Mr. Harrison left, and Maya was alone again on the stage. She walked to center, to the spot where she'd ended the performance, and slowly turned in a circle, taking in the empty seats, the dark corners, the waiting space. This theater had held her triumph tonight, but more importantly, it had held her truth. She was a dancer, not a deaf dancer, not a dancer, despite being deaf, just a dancer. Full stop. Period. And now, finally, the world knew it too. Outside, she found Elise waiting by the stage door, bundled in her winter coat, the white roses in her arms. Took you long enough, Elise signed with mock impatience. I'm freezing out here. Sorry, Maya signed back, laughing. Had some thinking to do? Well, thinking time is over. Celebrating time is now. I'm taking you to Betty's diner for pie and telling you in excruciating detail how brilliant you were. They walked through the quiet streets of Riverside, arms linked, breath-forming clouds in the cold air. The town was peaceful at this late hour, most lights already dimmed for the night. Above them, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, pinpricks of light in infinite darkness. At the diner, they slid into a vinyl booth and ordered slices of apple pie with ice cream. The waitress, a woman named Deb, who'd known them since they were kids, brought extra whipped cream without being asked. I saw the show tonight, Deb signed in her basic way, smiling warmly. You were something special, Maya. Really special. Small kindnesses like that, the way this town had shown up for her, supported her, believed in her, made Maya's throat tight with gratitude. She and Elise stayed late, the diner nearly empty around them, talking about everything and nothing. About the performance, yes, but also about Elise's latest painting series, about the book Maya was reading, about plans for Thanksgiving, about life in all its mundane and magnificent detail. Walking home, finally, alone, Maya felt a deep sense of peace settling over her. Not the excitement of triumph, but something quieter and more sustainable. A sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be. In her apartment, she hung her performance costume carefully, touched the silvery blue fabric gently. Tomorrow there would be another performance. And the day after that, another. She would dance this role 8 times over 2 weekends, and each performance would be an opportunity to deepen, to discover, to refine. But tonight was its own complete thing. Tonight had changed something fundamental, had shifted the ground beneath her feet in ways she was only beginning to understand. She climbed into bed, still too energized to sleep despite the bone-deep tiredness. She thought about Dr. Shaw's story, about that director who had believed enough to take a chance. And she thought about Mr. Harrison, about how belief could be learned, how people could grow past their assumptions if given the chance. Most of all, she thought about that moment on stage when everything had aligned, when she'd felt truly seen, truly valued, truly enough. Tomorrow she would wake up and do it all again. But tonight she would simply rest in the joy of this moment, this achievement, this proof that dreams pursued with whole heart could manifest into reality. Outside her window, the first snow of winter began to fall, soft and silent, blanketing Riverside in gentle white. Maya watched the flakes drift past the streetlights, their descent slow and graceful, each one unique and perfect in its way. Like dancers, she thought drowsily, each one moving through space in its own particular way, all of them beautiful. She slept deeply that night, her dreams full of light and movement, of connection and belonging, of a winter spirit who found her way home. Exit 6, The Sleep Descent. The weeks following opening night unfolded with a gentle, dreamlike quality. The production ran its course. 8 performances spread across 2 weekends, each one full and well-attended, each one bringing its own small triumphs and discoveries. Maya alternated performances with Vanessa once the other dancer's ankle healed, and they developed a friendly collaboration. each appreciating what the other brought to the role. But beyond the performances themselves, something subtler was happening. Something that felt less like achievement and more like integration, like pieces of Maya's life clicking into a more harmonious whole. The local newspaper ran a feature story about the production, with a headline that read, "Deaf Dancer Breaks Barriers, Opens Hearts." The article quoted Mr. Harrison, saying that working with Maya had expanded his understanding of what dance could be, and that he planned to actively seek out more diverse casting in future productions. Maya's children's ballet class swelled with new students after the production, including 2 deaf children whose parents had seen the performance and wanted their kids to have the same opportunities Maya had found. Maya worked with Mrs. Chen to develop a specialized class designed for deaf and hard-of-hearing young dancers, creating a space where they could learn and grow without having to constantly translate a hearing-centered approach. Teaching these children brought Maya particular joy. She watched little hands learning to sign dance terminology, saw young faces light up when they successfully executed a movement sequence, felt the trust they placed in her as someone who understood their experience from the inside. One snowy afternoon in December, Maya was working with her new deaf ballet students when Dr. Shaw appeared in the studio doorway. The older woman waited until the class ended, then approached with a proposition. "I'm working with the conservatory in the city," Dr. Shaw signed, settling onto a bench. "They want to develop a program specifically for deaf dancers, technique classes, choreography workshops, performance opportunities. They've asked me to head it up, and I'm looking for teaching assistants. Would you be interested?" Maya's eyes widened. "The conservatory? Teaching there." "Teaching and continuing your own training," Dr. Shaw clarified. "It would be part-time to start, a couple days a week. You could keep your work here in Riverside the other days, but it would give you access to higher-level training and the chance to shape how the next generation of deaf dancers are taught." It was exactly the kind of opportunity Maya had dreamed about, but never quite believed could materialize. A chance to not just dance, but to shape the field, to create pathways for others, to be part of something larger than her own individual success. "Yes," Maya signed without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." Dr. Shaw smiled, the expression warm and knowing. "I thought you might say that. We'll start in January. Welcome aboard." After Dr. Shaw left, Maya sat alone in the studio for a long time, watching snow fall past the windows. Fat, lazy flakes that drifted down like dancers themselves, each one on its own particular trajectory. The light was fading toward evening, that blue winter twilight that made everything soft and quiet. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the years of training, the disappointments, the small victories, the moment of doubt when she hadn't gotten the lead role, and then the unexpected opening that had changed everything. It hadn't been a straight path. It hadn't been easy, but it had been hers, authentic and hard-won. And now, from that foundation, new possibilities were emerging, not just for her, but for the students she would teach, for the art form she loved, for the understanding of what dance could be and who could dance. That evening, Riverside held its annual tree lighting ceremony in the town square. Maya walked downtown bundled in her warmest coat, a knit scarf wrapped around her neck, to meet Elise and her parents. The square was decorated with white lights strung between lampposts, and an enormous spruce stood in the center, waiting for the ceremonial lighting. The whole town seemed to be there, neighbors and friends, shopkeepers and teachers, families with small children bundled in puffy coats. Someone had set up a table with hot chocolate and cookies. Carolers clustered near the tree, their breath visible in the cold air as they sang songs Maya couldn't hear, but could sense in the joy on their faces. When the moment came to light the tree, the mayor counted down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and suddenly the spruce blazed with thousands of tiny white lights, transforming into something magical. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Maya stood with her parents and Elise, watching the lit tree. Against the dark sky, snowflakes catching the light as they fell. Her father's arm was around her shoulders, her mother holding her hand. Elise pressed close against the cold. Surrounded by this warmth, this community, this belonging, Maya felt something in her chest expand and settle at the same time. This was home. This small town with its gentle rhythms, its supportive people, its quiet belief in her. But home wasn't a cage anymore. It was a foundation, a launching point, a place to return to while also moving forward into larger worlds. Later, back in her apartment, Maya made chamomile tea and stood by her window looking out at the snow-covered street. Her phone buzzed with a text from one of her deaf students' mothers. "Thank you for teaching my daughter. For the first time, she feels like she truly belongs somewhere." Maya read the message 3 times, feeling tears prick at her eyes. This was why it all mattered. Not just her own success, but what that success could mean for others. Every barrier she broke down made the path a little easier for whoever came next. She thought about that little girl in her class, about Emma from her children's ballet, about all the young deaf dancers who would now grow up in a world where it was just a little bit more accepted that they belonged in dance studios, on stages, in the full expression of their artistic gifts. The snow continued to fall, building soft drifts on windowsills and car roofs, muffling the world in white silence. Maya's apartment was warm and cozy, the lamp by her reading chair casting a golden glow, the kettle on the stove whistling softly as water heated for more tea. She pulled out her journal, a leather-bound notebook she'd been keeping since high school, filled with her thoughts and dreams and observations. She wrote about the past few months, trying to capture not just the events, but the feeling of them, the emotional journey from disappointment to opportunity to triumph. "Something Dr. Shaw said keeps coming back to me," she wrote, "that sometimes people need to see something before they can believe it's possible. I think that's true. But also, sometimes we need to live something before we can believe it's possible ourselves. I had to dance that role, had to prove it to myself as much as to anyone else, had to learn that I am enough, exactly as I am." She wrote for a while longer, then closed the journal and set it aside. The ritual of writing had served its purpose, helping her process, helping her integrate the experience into the story of her life. In the days that followed, Maya settled into a new rhythm. The performances were over, but regular classes continued. She taught her ballet students, worked her shifts at the bookstore, began planning for her new position at the conservatory. Life moved forward with its blend of ordinary routine and extraordinary possibility. Christmas came and went, warm and gentle in her parents' house with too much food and comfortable silences and the deep satisfaction of family. Elise gave her a painting she'd made, an abstract representation of a dancer in motion, all flowing lines and bold colors. Maya hung it in her apartment where she could see it from her bed, a daily reminder of how she was seen by those who loved her. New Year's Eve was quiet. Maya stayed in, making herself a nice dinner, watching old movies with subtitles, reflecting on the year that was ending and the one about to begin. At midnight, or what her phone told her was midnight, she stood at her window with a mug of tea and watched fireworks bloom silently in the sky over Riverside, colors exploding in the darkness. Beauty offered without sound, a celebration she could fully participate in despite her deafness, because wonder didn't require hearing, only seeing, only being present to the moment. She thought about resolutions, about intentions for the new year, but nothing specific came to mind. Just a general sense of wanting to continue forward, to keep growing, to honor both the struggle and the joy of the path she was walking. January arrived with deep cold and brilliant sunshine. Maya's first day at the conservatory came, a long drive into the city, new spaces to navigate, new faces to meet. The other teaching assistants in the program were welcoming, the facilities were beautiful, and the students, a mix of deaf and hearing dancers, were eager and talented. Dr. Shaw pulled Maya aside after that first session. "You're a natural teacher," she signed warmly. "The students respond to you. This is going to be good." And it was good. The work was challenging but rewarding, adding new dimensions to Maya's understanding of dance and her role in the community. She found herself growing not just as a dancer, but as an artist, an educator, an advocate. Her life in Riverside continued alongside her city work. She still taught her children's classes, still worked at the bookstore, still met Elise for coffee and her parents for Sunday dinners. The balance felt right. Roots in the small town that had nurtured her, branches reaching toward bigger opportunities. One snowy evening in late January, Maya was walking home from the community center when she passed the theater where she'd performed just 2 months earlier. On impulse, she stopped, looking up at the marquee. A new show was advertised now, a community production of a musical, a completely different style and energy. But Maya could still feel it, the residue of her triumph, the memory of standing on that stage and proving something important. not just to others, but to herself, that she belonged, that she was enough, that her difference was not deficit, but simply a different way of moving through the world. She continued home through the quiet streets, her boots crunching in fresh snow. The night was clear and cold, stars sharp overhead, the moon just past full and bright enough to cast shadows. In her apartment, she went through her evening routine, with deliberate mindfulness. Tea brewing, soft pajamas, gentle music playing. She couldn't hear it, but she turned on a playlist anyway, the phone vibrating rhythmically on the table, the bass notes she could sense adding a subtle pulse to the room. She stretched out on her bed, pulling a soft blanket over herself, feeling the day's tiredness settling into her muscles in a pleasant way. Her body was tired from teaching, from dancing, from the simple act of moving through the world with intention and presence. But it was a good tiredness, an earned tiredness, the kind that comes from living fully, from engaging completely, from giving your gifts to the world without holding back. Maya's eyes grew heavy. Her thoughts began to drift, loosening their grip on the specific and concrete, floating into the softer realms of half-sleep. She thought about dancing, about movement and stillness, about the way bodies could speak truths that words couldn't capture. She thought about silence, about the deep, rich quiet that had always been her companion, that some people feared, but she had learned to love. Silence wasn't absence. It was its own kind of presence, its own kind of music. She thought about snow falling outside her window, each flake on its own particular journey, each one unique, each one perfect, each one finding its place to land and rest. Her breathing slowed, deepened. Her muscles released their last holdings of tension. Her mind grew quiet, peaceful, settling like snow. The world outside continued its gentle spinning. Riverside slept under its blanket of white. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. The moon moved across the sky, casting its silver light on snow and roof and window. And in her small apartment above the bookstore, Maya slept deeply and dreamlessly, her body at rest but her spirit dancing still, moving through landscapes of light and shadow, reaching and spinning and finding, always finding, her way home. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more opportunities, more moments of both doubt and triumph. But for now, in this moment, in this quiet winter night, everything was exactly as it should be. Maya was exactly as she should be. Enough, complete, whole. A dancer who had proven not that deaf people could dance, for that had always been true, but that the world could learn to see them, to value them, to make space for their particular gifts. This was her victory, not loud, not sharp, but gentle and enduring as winter snow. And in her sleep, Maya smiled. The night held her in its soft embrace. The town dreamed around her, and all was well, all was peaceful. All was, finally and beautifully, exactly as it was meant to be. Rest now, rest deeply, rest in the knowledge that you are seen, you are valued, you are enough. Rest in the warmth of community, the softness of belonging, the quiet truth of your own worth. Rest as the snow falls, rest as the stars shine, rest as the world turns gently, inevitably toward morning. Rest, just rest, and dream of dancing. End.